Welcome to our deep dive today. You ever get that feeling like you're surrounded by all these fascinating people, but you're only seeing a tiny sliver of who they really are? Well, that's what we're doing today with Bob Camblin.
He is kind of an enigma, isn't he? A painter, sculptor, printmaker. His work, I mean, you can find it in galleries from Chicago all the way to the Whitney and even internationally.
Exactly. And we're going way beyond just a regular bio here. We've got like decades of exhibition records, and some of the titles, they're so intriguing. Plus, we've got actual quotes from Camblin himself. And we're going to take a deep dive into one of his paintings, Safe Passage. We're going to look at it through, well, through the lenses of Zen philosophy and even the ancient I Ching.
It's almost like piecing together a puzzle, you know. Can we actually figure out the essence of Bob Camblin? Not just the artist, but the thinker, using his own words and how other people interpreted his work.
Let's give it a shot. First off, I got to say, the sheer volume of work this guy produced is mind-blowing. Exhibitions going all the way back to the mid-50s, and they just keep going. It's not just the quantity, though. Some of these titles, they really grab you, you know?
Yeah, like the last garage sale may not be from 1978. What do you think he was going for with that title? What do you think?
I know, right? It really makes you think, was he making a statement about, I don't know, maybe the art market? Or was it more like a playful jab at the idea of like an artist's legacy? We also get a glimpse of that playful side in his reflections on teaching at Rice University.
Yeah, he taught there for years, right? While still creating his own art. Apparently, they had this show at Rice called the Highway Show. And get this, Camlin's comment on his third year of teaching was, the first year, I assumed. The second year, I capitulated. The third year, I'm teaching.
Uh-huh. He sounds like he definitely had a sense of humor about himself, even if it was a little wry. Okay, you ready to dive into Camblin's own words? This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, his quotes, they tell us so much about his personality and his whole philosophy, you know? Like when he talks about art and life, he says this: art is not just images. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake.
Wow, that's really something. It's like he's saying, art isn't just this separate thing,
Yeah.
this high-minded pursuit. It's all tangles up with living, with all the messy, beautiful parts of life. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it really suggests that for Camlin, you know, art was a necessity, like a way of understanding the world, his place in it, and this idea of the artist being so connected to life. It comes up again when he says, "The artist today is the only free agent. He is not committed except so much as he desires it."
That's a pretty bold statement,
Mhm.
especially back then in the late 60s and early 70s. I mean, so
Yes.
much was changing,
Yeah.
socially, politically. It's almost like he's saying that artists have a unique responsibility to operate outside of those societal constraints.
It definitely has that rebellious spirit, that feeling of pushing back against expectations. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And this whole idea of pushing boundaries. It even goes into his thoughts on the future of art. He even says, "We may be moving to a participatory type of art."
Wait, hold on. Participatory art. That's incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, this was way before interactive installations and community-based art became, such a big thing. Was he some kind of like a visionary or something?
Well, it certainly seems that way. He was definitely turned in to how the relationship between artist and the audience was evolving. Like he was envisioning this future where art becomes a shared experience. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We've got so much more to unpack, you know. What really jumped out at me was how often nature comes up in his quotes.
You know what? You're absolutely right. But it's not just pretty landscapes. It's almost uh, like he sees nature as this profound teacher. Like, listen to this observation. 3 cottonwood trees, dense cluster of new branches, now with them gone. Look,
It's so simple, isn't it? But it says so much. It's this call to be present, to notice all those subtle changes happening all around us. He's not just looking. He's really truly seeing. And
mm,
I think this deep connection he had with nature, I think it was tied to a larger philosophy.
you mean Zen. Because when he says find something in nature that completes you and then surrender, that definitely have a kind of a Zen flavor to it. But for those of us who, aren't super familiar with Zen, how would you explain this whole idea of like surrendering to nature?
Well, imagine you're standing on the edge of this huge ocean. You feel the wind on your face, you know, you feel the salt spray on your skin. Zen is like it's like an invitation to let go of your ego, your need to control everything, and just be present in that moment, connected to something bigger than yourself. And I think Camblin's words, they evoke that same feeling of letting go.
That's beautiful. And he describes that connection so vividly. It's almost like poetry. This one, this one gives me chills. The cosmos waves as me with tree leaves. Sun-heated air moves across the electrons of my skin. Sunlight reflects those greens. First, white, then yellow-green, and in deep shadows, blue.
It's like he's becoming one with the landscape,
Right.
like he's merging with the energy of the whole universe, you know. And he captures this interconnectedness in this beautiful haiku too. Not a leaf moves, and yet we all feel the cool breeze.
There's so much in those few words. He's pointing to these subtle forces at play in nature, the unseen connections that bind us all. It really makes you wonder, did his artistic process come from this place? Yeah. This place of deep observation and surrender?
Let's see. Because next we're going to dive into Camblin's quotes on, well, on Zen, paradox, and the creative process itself.
So we've talked about Camblin's connection to nature, but it seems like his artistic process was also like really grounded in Zen philosophy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, his words, they suggest this real fascination with paradox, you know, and that kind of creative tension that fuels art. Like, for example, he says this, in the balance, patience, and yet, freedom again, and yet. In silence, the reality can be maintained.
Yeah, it's like he's saying that balance isn't like a finish line. It's more like this constant dance between opposite forces.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's this need for discipline and surrender, silence and expression. It really fascinating.
Right, and then that tension, we see it again in this other quote, step off the train of thought, to find the power that is no power, to do the work that is not work, to laugh the true laugh, bending is not bowing.
Whoa. Okay, there's a lot there. But I think it speaks to that Zen idea of effortless action, like letting go of control and allowing creativity to just flow naturally. You know, it actually reminds me of something I struggle with, that inner critic always second guessing everything.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling. It's a common struggle, especially for creative people, right? But Camblin, it's like he found a way to quiet that voice, to tap into something, a deeper source of inspiration. He even links it directly to Zen practice. He says, Zazen, the aimless mind, focuses itself.
So it's not about forcing those ideas. It's more about cultivating this state of
No.
mindfulness where those insights can just emerge organically. And it sounds like this approach was like his whole creative process. He says one must learn not to look, but to see. One must try to fail in order to succeed. Success will be another failure. Process and awareness of it cannot be failure.
So true. It's about embracing the whole journey, right? With all the ups and downs, instead of just focusing on a specific outcome. Failure becomes a stepping stone, a necessary part of growth.
Yeah, it's like he's giving us permission to experiment, to let go of that fear of messing up, and that's really freeing. But for all his philosophical stuff, Camblin doesn't seem like like a stuffy, overly serious type of guy.
Oh, no, not at all. His humor, I mean, it comes out in a lot of his quotes, like this one. Fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years, perhaps.
Uh-huh. It's like he's winking at us, reminding us to not get too hung up on the idea of things lasting forever.
Mm.
And then there's this one. Your ego hidden and following you as gracefully as a goldfish's shit, folded under the waving tail. How neat that thought is.
It's so funny, but also kind of profound. He's pointing out how absurd the ego is, that part of us that's always trying to control everything, to define who we are.
And lastly, there's this quote that I think really sums up his whole perspective. When understood, all truth is funny.
There's such wisdom in that. It's like when we can see through our own illusions, when we embrace the paradoxes and the complexities of life, we can find humor in it, even liberation.
Okay. Before we go too far down the rabbit hole here, let's bring it back to safe passage. It's time to take a closer look at this painting and see how all these ideas we've been talking about, how they all come together.
Yeah, good idea. First, though, let's try to help our listener actually visualize safe passage, because it's not just a pretty landscape. There's a lot going on beneath the surface.
Right. The sources describe it as this river landscape,
Oh.
lush and green with these tall trees on either side. Their trunks, they're all textured and weathered. And the sun, either it's rising or setting, it casts this warm golden light that just washes over everything.
Yeah, it's like you're stepping into this peaceful, almost sacred space. And those overhanging branches, they create this natural frame. They draw your eye towards the horizon, which is, well, it's shrouded in mist.
It adds this sense of mystery, It makes
Yeah.
you wonder what's beyond that mist. What's that safe passage leading to?
Exactly. And while the scene feels really peaceful, there's also this underlying tension, this sense that something deeper is going on. Remember how the sources mentioned those subtle warnings hidden in the foliage?
Oh, right, right. It's like even in the midst of all that beauty and tranquility, there's this potential for danger, this sense of the unknown lurking beneath the surface. It's a powerful juxtaposition.
Very powerful. And that complexity, it makes it the perfect canvas for exploring those Zen and I Ching interpretations. Let's start with Zen, since we were just talking about it.
That's good, good.
So, how does safe passage embody those Zen principles? Like impermanence, surrender, finding enlightenment in everyday life.
Well, I think the river is really key here. In Zen, water is often used to symbolize, well, the ever-changing nature of reality. It's always flowing, always adapting.
And the way Camblin paints the river with those dynamic brushstrokes and the reflections of light, it really reinforces that sense of movement and change.
Exactly. It's not a static image.
Mm.
It's a snapshot of a process. It's a reminder that everything is in flux. And I think this ties into the idea of surrender that Camplin talked about. Right, right. Letting go of our attachment to things staying the same and allowing ourselves to just be carried by the current of life.
And that light on the horizon, shrouded in mist, it becomes this metaphor for enlightenment. It's a destination that's always beckoning us forward. But it's not about striving or forcing our way there.
It's about trusting the journey, being present in each moment and letting the path unfold naturally. That's such a beautiful interpretation.
It is, it is. But safe passage, it can also be interpreted through the lens of the I Ching, that ancient Chinese text. Camblin was known to be fascinated by it.
Yeah.
Have you ever consulted the I Ching?
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure I fully get how it works. It's like a divination system, right? With all those hexagrams.
Exactly. And each hexagram, it represents a specific energy or situation, and it offers guidance and insights into, the forces that are at play. In relation to safe passage, the sources point to the hexagram Kwai, which means dispersion.
Dispersion. What does that mean in this context?
Okay, think of it this way. Imagine you're feeling, I don't know, stuck, blocked, like there's something preventing you from moving forward. Kwai represents the energy of dissolving those barriers, clearing the way for progress and resolution.
So the safe passage in the painting, it could symbolize that process of breaking through those limitations.
Yeah.
Finding a way to navigate those challenges and move towards a place of greater clarity and understanding.
Yeah, that's a great interpretation. And that interplay of light and darkness in the painting with the sun kind of breaking through the mist, it echoes the I Ching's concept of yin and yang, that balance of opposing forces.
It's like the painting itself is a representation of that delicate balance, that dance between light and shadow, activity and stillness, creation and destruction.
Exactly. And the open path of the river winding towards that hazy horizon, it becomes this visual representation of the journey itself, a journey that requires both courage and surrender.
Now, this is where I need a little help. The sources also mentioned that the light in safe passage can be seen as like a guiding force. But if we're talking about surrender, doesn't that imply like a lack of direction, a willingness to just let go and see where you end up? How do those two ideas work together?
That's a really good question, and it gets to the heart of that paradox we were talking about earlier. Surrender isn't about passively giving up. It's about letting go of the ego's need to control, to have all the answers.
So it's not about blindly wandering. It's about trusting that there's something bigger,
Yeah.
Some kind of universal flow that's guiding us towards our highest potential, even though we can't always see the path clearly.
Beautifully put. Yeah. The light then becomes the symbol of that trust. A reminder that even when we're surrounded by uncertainty, there's something guiding us towards our own safe passage.
Okay, so we've looked at safe passage through Zen and the I Ching. And it's clear that both interpretations, they offer these really rich insights into the painting's meaning. But what about Camblin's own artistic style?
Yeah.
How does that contribute to our understanding of the work?
Another great question. Remember how the sources mention Impressionism and Post-Impressionism as influences? Well, we can see those influences in the way he uses brushstrokes to capture those fleeting qualities of light and color.
Right. It's not about creating a perfect, like a photorealistic representation of the landscape. It's more about evoking a feeling, an impression.
Yeah.
which fits perfectly with those themes of impermanence and subjective experience that we've been talking about.
Exactly. And his use of those warm golden hues and the way he layers the foliage, it also kind of hints at an influence from Japanese aesthetics and traditional landscape painting.
Which makes sense given Camblin's fascination with Zen and Eastern art. It's like all these different influences, they've all come together to create a style that's both unique and really resonant with the painting's themes.
Absolutely. And there's one more element we shouldn't forget. Camblin's, his subtle use of humor.
Oh, right. It's easy to get so caught up in the philosophical and symbolic stuff that we forget about that playful side of him.
But it's there even in a work as seemingly serious as Safe Passage. It's in the way he paints those subtly mischievous shadows, or the almost whimsical way the branches twist and turn.
It's like he's reminding us to not take things too seriously, to find that sense of lightness and wonder even in the middle of life's complexities.
Exactly. It brings us back to that quote, "When understood, all truth is funny." There's a real joy in being able to see the humor in everything, even the things that challenge us or make us uncomfortable.
It's like he's inviting us to approach life and art with a sense of curiosity and playfulness,
Right.
instead of getting bogged down by rigid interpretations or expectations.
I love that. And on that note, I think it's time we move on to another side of Camlin, a side that we haven't really explored yet, his experimentation with more abstract forms.
Right. Those intriguing titles like Chrysalis Series and Tattoo Show, they definitely suggest something different from those peaceful landscapes we've been talking about.
Yeah, they do. And I'm really curious to see how those experimental works connect to the themes we've already uncovered. Was he still exploring those same ideas of impermanence, surrender, the creative process, just through a different lens?
Well, let's find out.
Yeah.
Because next we're going into uncharted territory. We're going to explore those bolder, more abstract expressions of Bob Camblin's artistic vision. It's kind of wild, right? We can spend like 2 whole parts of this deep dive on Bob Camblin, and I still feel like we're barely scratching the surface.
I know what you mean. It's true. We've followed his journey, right?
Yeah.
From those serene landscapes to those exhibitions with super intriguing titles,
Yeah.
like Chrysalis Series and Tattoo Show. It's like they're hinting at this whole other dimension to his work.
Okay, I'm dying to unpack this. How did he go from like those quiet river scenes to something like construction deconstruction events? Is there a connection, like a thread running through these totally different styles?
Well, I don't think it's so much a break as it is like an expansion. Remember how Camblin always talked about constant evolution? One must try to fail in order to succeed. I think his experimental phase, it wasn't him rejecting his old work. It was him jumping into these new ways of expressing himself.
So it's not a straight line. It's more like a spiral. He keeps coming back to those core themes: impermanence, the creative process, that playful tension between control and surrender.
Mhm.
But each time he's looking at them in a new way.
Exactly. Think about that quote, about stepping off the train of thought to find the power that isn't power. It really resonates with these experimental pieces. They feel like he deliberately stepped outside of his comfort zone, like he took a plunge into the unknown.
Okay, let's play detective here for a minute.
Hmm.
We don't have like actual images of these experimental works, just those titles that
Yeah.
that spark your curiosity. Chrysalis series feels like, I don't know, maybe the easiest one to start with.
Yeah, I think so too. The word chrysalis, it just makes you think of transformation, right? Shedding the old to reveal something new. And knowing Camblin's thing with nature, it's easy to picture these works exploring those natural cycles like life and death, growth and decay.
Maybe even going beyond, like
Yeah.
literal representation. Could the chrysalis be like a metaphor for the artistic process itself?
Mhm.
The artists, they go inward, they break down old forms, and then they emerge with something completely different.
Ooh, I like that. And that connects back to that theme of impermanence. Like the caterpillar, it disappears into the chrysalis only to come out as this butterfly. Maybe Camblin saw art as this constant process of dissolving and reforming.
Okay, but then we have Tattoo Show, and that feels a lot edgier, more, I don't know, more provocative maybe. How does that fit in?
Tattoos are so interesting, aren't they? I mean, they mark the body. It's like this personal statement, and it's permanent. But our bodies, they're not permanent. There's that Camblin paradox again.
Well, you're right. And tattoos, I mean, back then they were even more, rebellious, pushing those societal boundaries.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, was Camblin exploring the body as a canvas? Or maybe he was challenging those traditional ideas of beauty.
Well, the sources don't really give us any specifics, but that mystery that's part of what makes it so interesting. We know Camblin talked about participatory art, maybe tattoo show involved other people. Like it blurred the lines between the artist and the subject.
I can almost picture it now, like a performance piece or a collaborative creation. It's so intriguing. But then there's construction deconstruction events, and that one just throws me off. It sounds so abstract, almost conceptual.
That one just screams Zen influence to me. Construction and deconstruction, creation and destruction. It's that constant dance of opposing forces that we keep seeing. It's like he's visually showing us the essence of impermanence.
And that word events, it suggests it wasn't like just static art. Were these like happenings,
Hmm.
performances, installations that changed over time, were left to just fill in the blanks, which is it's frustrating and exciting all at the same time.
It is, and it really speaks to how powerful Camblin's work is. I mean, even without seeing the actual art, those titles, they just make you think. Maybe that was his whole point all along, to make us, the viewers, active participants in creating the meaning.
To push us to learn not to look, but to see. Like he said, it's like he's saying, "Hey, here's some clues. Now go on your own artistic adventure."
And what an adventure it's been. We've seen it all, haven't we? Tranquil landscapes, mind-bending experiments. I mean, we've uncovered a depth to Bob Camblin that goes way beyond just, the typical facts and figures.
We've explored his love of nature, his embrace of Zen philosophy, his playful sense of humor, and his constant drive to push the boundaries of art. It's been quite a ride.
It really has. But like that hazy horizon in Safe Passage, there's always more to discover. If we learned anything from Bob Camblin, it's that the journey itself, that's the real masterpiece.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought from Camblin himself. He said, "The real seeing has its own property of deception." Let that sink in for a bit as you go out and experience the world and art with fresh eyes.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Bob Camblin.
We hope you found it interesting and that it left you wanting more. Until next time.